This is DUNE TALK, a DUNENewsNet.com production. Join us now for the latest Dune news, reactions, and lively discussions.
Hello, Dune Nation. It's been a well-deserved break for the crew after reviewing Dune Part 2, though we still have much more to say about that movie. For today, though, it's time for Dune Prophecy. That's right, we are getting a Dune TV series this year. This is Marcus, your friendly editor at DuneNewsNet.com, and I'm joined once again by a full house of Dune experts to discuss this latest teaser.
Hey everyone, great to be back. I'm excited to dig into this footage. It's been a little while since our last recording, at least the one that I was on. So feels good to see everyone again, and glad you're tuning in. Should be an interesting conversation about this. Definitely different from the movies. So thanks for joining us.
Hi, Mark from Dune Info here. Oh, sorry, I've got a sandwich and popcorn stuck on my hand. Yeah, great to be back with you all. Exciting that we've actually got some new Dune footage. Dune Part 2, we all knew what we were going to expect more or less from the book, but we're into uncharted territories here, so excited to hear everyone's conspiracy theories on the footage.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm excited to be back and pleasantly surprised by this trailer, so can't wait to talk about it.
Hey everyone, Simon here. Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Didn't expect Dune Prophecy trailer, but we got one. So we'll start breaking it down.
Okay, let's dive into some exciting footage for Dune Prophecy.
Dune TV News.
It's been a long time coming, but a new Dune TV series is finally a reality. Originally ordered by HBO Max in 2019, with a working title of Dune: The Sisterhood, this project has undergone numerous delays, including the pandemic era that halted TV productions across the board. Then there were various changes of the guard in terms of showrunner, directors, and even actors. Then after another pause in early 2023, the series reportedly had a change in creative direction. That's reportedly to align the setting more closely with what Denis Villeneuve had established in the Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 movies. And then the show received its final title, Dune Prophecy. So you can read more about all of those developments in our past TV news coverage on DuneNewsNet.com. Anyway, production was finally completed late last year, and now here we are with a fresh teaser, 1 minute and 20 seconds, and this gives us a first look of what we can expect from the show. As usual, we're going to go through shot by shot. Simon, I'll let you go ahead and kick us off.
All right, thanks for that, Marcus. First shot we get is space. Of course, it's Dune. We know it takes place in space, but what's really great about this trailer, and you get early on, is all the transition. So you get something that looks like someone traveling through space with spice, but slowly, and this is the first 9 seconds, I don't know if you want to call it the gas or whatever it is, slowly starts morphing into an eye. We all know how important eyes are in Dune. If you look at the Dune, that logo, it is an eye. And we all know eyes are really important. And then in about the 6-second mark, we see a bunch of people bowing down to what looks like water in a well. That's what it looks like to me. So those are the first 9 seconds. There's a lot of imagery already right there. Yeah, I love that everyone's dressed in black. And obviously we know that this is the sisterhood, or what will become the sisterhood. But for someone that doesn't know, it's like, who are these people, bowing down to this? And what I love that was really smart, I think, on Max or whoever came up with the idea of putting in the trailer. I don't think it's going to be a line that we're going to see in any of the shows. Even tells us 10,000 years before Paul Atreides. So it's kind of like, hey, you're not going to see Paul. You're not going to see Jessica. This is something totally different. And I love that's how we get introduced to the world of I still want to call it the sisterhood. I know it's prophecy, but we've been calling it sisterhood for such a long time. We get introduced to this new, but yet old Dune world by that voiceover.
Yeah, I mean, the 10,000 year time difference is important to establish. I have seen some confusion online because Dune Part 1 starts as 10,191, but it doesn't say as the guild. So people are thinking, well, if that's 10,000 years in the future, then the prophecy should be now.
Yeah.
So there's
Oh,
some confusion surrounding that. So um, hopefully they'll clear that up. This is just a trailer, but hopefully they'll establish the dates to do with the guild, or just it's got nothing to do with planet Earth, perhaps. I don't know, but
Yeah.
there has been some discussion and confusion I've seen surrounding.
Yeah, and it's important to note that this is after the Butlerian Jihad. So like basically this is a feudal setting. So like there's no technology, like, well, there's technology, but there's no computers. So imagine what our society would look like if now we switch off all computers, and like how would things look like in 100 years? How would humans develop? So that's one of the aspects that the show is going to explore.
That Simon, I appreciate him pointing out the editing of the trailer and kind of the use of the imagery transitioning between different shots and sequences. I think that's a great observation. Definitely makes the trailer stand out. I think definitely has a little bit of a style to it that really jumps out at you, and also just the way that the imagery is used. Like again, that kind of space body in the universe, and then it goes into like this eye, and then the sisterhood. It seems like in black cloaks and whatnot. It's definitely evocative. I mean, as he said, kind of typical classic like Dune imagery in general, but then also I think it's very in some ways, I think very close to kind of things that were implemented in the Villeneuve films as well. In terms of, I think there's a lot of eye imagery, eye based imagery in the films. And speaking of the films, it kind of leads into this next section where we see a ship coming down, arriving. In terms of design, it definitely feels very similar to ships that we've seen in the Villeneuve films. It has it's kind of like a brutalist kind of design to it. It's not very fancy. It's just got these kind of harsh angles. It's very plain looking. Kind of almost reminds me of, we don't get to see them very much in the films, but it kind of similar to the Sardaukar kind of ships or transports, um, in terms of like the size and the shape and whatnot. And then overall, these few shots that kind of are put together here, it seems like they're arriving on this planet. At least the way it's segmented and sequenced in this trailer, they're arriving. It's like this funeral procession essentially, and they're bringing this body to, we don't know where. I mean, it definitely, again, it kind of reminds me of Seleucus Secundus in terms of like the aesthetic of the planet. Like it's pretty dark, it's pretty gray. It doesn't look like there's a lot of life on this planet. There's a lot of water, but it feels very kind of minimalist in some ways, including the costuming. And it's these kind of plain black robes or gowns. And then in terms of the actual funeral procession, it also reminds me of Jamis, for example, from um, the end of Dune Part 1 and beginning of Dune Part 2 when they're carrying his body. It looks like the body is treated or wrapped very similarly. Obviously, it's not unique to Dune necessarily. That's kind of it's something that is seen like across different cultures and whatnot. But yeah, it definitely, the imagery and the way that these kind of shots follow one another in just this first 20 seconds. I think it does a good job of just kind of getting in the viewer's brain and like, yes, this is the same universe as that you're familiar with from the films that just came out over the last couple of years. And I think that's, again, kind of talking to what Marcus mentioned earlier. There was some creative shuffling, obviously, maybe some disagreement about the aesthetic and the direction of the show in terms of maybe just the style, maybe also the storytelling. We don't really know too much at this point, but I think it's logical to follow and at least have something similar to what we got in the movies, because they do want it to seem of one piece, even if Villeneuve, for example, isn't really that involved at this point. But again, for me, I wasn't sure what my expectations were for this show. I guess they were a little bit, I was trying to lower them because just with all these different creative issues, you never know what it's going to be like. But I'll say it now, and as we go through the trailer, I'm sure maybe my thoughts will change a little bit, but I am a little bit more optimistic, I think, after seeing this. And I think even the first 20, 25 seconds, getting these different, setting the tone, I think, and getting some of this imagery in there helped alleviate maybe some concerns that I had. But definitely an interesting way of getting people back into this world just, so soon after part 2.
yeah. One of the concerns I had was that how can something on, the small screen be as epic as the Villeneuve films? So I feel like they're doing a good job of like giving it an epic grandiosity in terms of scale, at least with the shots that they've shown us so far.
Whole discussion like a couple episodes back about how like Dune could use more room to breathe, like longer formats. So hopefully we are going to get more of that intrigue, like the relationship between the sisterhood, the different factions, like really exploring what's going on in the broader universe.
Yeah. And the funeral procession that you mentioned, Johnny, even though this is loosely based apparently on the Sisterhood novel, this book does start with a funeral on the Bene Gesserit planet, which isn't Wallach 9 at that point. It's Rorschach, I think it is. So, a sister has failed to take the water of life or their equivalent of the poison, and they are having a funeral procession for her. So whether or not that's some inspiration they've taken from the book, or it could be something completely different, I don't know. But that at least does seem to tie into some of the plot elements at the start of the book.
I'll just say real quick, Mark, I'm glad that you mentioned the novel, and I think that is an interesting point about the funeral. I like that idea. I would be curious, if they use that directly in the show or not.
The novels, it's been a while since I've read them as well, so I had a quick flick through this weekend, and because it's the school's trilogy, so it's about the Mentats and the Spacing Guild as well. So the story sort of drifts around the Sisterhood, the Mentats, and the Spacing Guild, and also the aftermaths of the Butlerian Jihad, where all the thinking machines have been destroyed. So there's those elements in the book. From what we see of the trailer, there's no Mentats, there's no Spacing Guild, there's no mention of thinking machines. So whether or not we're only focusing the trailer on the Sisterhood, or whether or not they've just removed those threads completely, again, we'll just have to wait and see.
To connect it to the novels is exciting, but yeah, I'm also just sort of like leery about like how close are we going to get to like canonical lore, or is this just going to be more of like a general exploration of the Bene Gesserit, which have been really well set up in the films compared to the other schools.
Yeah.
So,
and even if we just go by the names that we've seen on IMDb and have been announced, some of them are from the novel, some of them are completely new. So it's potluck as to what they're going to follow.
Oh, let us know which ones are in the novel, because I haven't read it either. So I want to note, maybe track who started out in the first draft and who was brought in later.
Yeah, so I guess as we go through, we'll mention who was part of the novel.
We've had the setup now in the trailer of sort of like the environment. The next few seconds gives us our first sort of face time with a few characters. So this section opens up with Desmond Hart, who is played by Travis Fimmel, who is described as a charismatic soldier with an enigmatic past who seeks to gain the Emperor's trust at the expense of the Sisterhood. So this is a possible conflict character for our Bene Gesserit characters. I mean, depending on whose side you end up being on. I noted that he was very disheveled when he's walking into this very clean, very epically proportioned throne room. There's these two giant statues that flank the throne that have like really dynamic flow to them, which I thought was interesting. And so he should feel really small, but he's in these really bright yellow colors, including his hair. So it kind of helps him feel like maybe a player in the scene, is kind of how I was reading it. I'm trying to pay close attention to the clothes in the show, because I think that they might be, quote, doing something with it, because we are able to get closer in on these characters than we were in the film. Then we get a quick shot of Mark Strong's Emperor, Javico Carino, who is a man from a great line of wartime emperors who is called upon to govern the Imperium and manage a fragile peace. He's sitting on the throne with his Bene Gesserit looming behind him, and I love the texturing on the Emperor's uniform in this scene, because it's almost like embedded shrapnel that kind of goes over his chest. But I think that there's something really practical about it that might give us an insight into his character at this point. The Bene Gesserit looks to be Reverend Mother Kasha, who is played by singer and actress Jihei, who is the Emperor's truthsayer. She's loyal to the Sisterhood and being challenged in the story. She's wearing traditional black veil. We're seeing the same kind of honeycomb patterns that we saw in the films, but with different materials. Some of the shots show that her dress is really shiny, which made me think slippery, like an eel. So she's playing with the light in the room with her character. it seems like she's doing some soothsaying, and she's signaling. And I assume that this is for the benefit of the emperor. So we're looking at maybe Carino battle language or something. So I thought it was a really cool kind of first glimpse of how politics might be set up at the beginning of the story.
Emperor Javico, he is actually in the novels, but he's in the third part of that trilogy. I think he's just a teenager at the end. So there's been like some speculation online regarding, okay, so maybe this is not adapting the novels directly. Well, we know that for sure. It's not going to be the direct adaptation. It's inspired by those novels, but could it in some way be continuing that story, or in a way, because now we're seeing the emperor as a grown man. So this could be happening decades after the event of that whole trilogy.
In the novels, the Harkonnen sisters are young, and when we see them in the trailer, they are played by much older actresses. And we do know that there's an actress being cast as a younger version of one of the Harkonnens. So it could well be that we'll see flashbacks to events from the novels, but this is a continuation of past into new territory, if you like. It's hard to say.
What's also important is to note that the emperor is eventually, I don't know how many grandfathers back, but to Shaddam, the Christopher Walken character in part 2. So that's very important, showing that they've been in charge of the Golden Throne for eons at this point.
Yeah, it definitely makes it seem like the erosion of power and influence that we've seen at the end of the film is maybe like more warranted if we know that this family has been in charge for 10,000 years.
Pretty much, Shaddam IV's father was an emperor. His father's father's father. Rachel gets that joke.
I understand this joke.
I figured you would get the joke.
Yes.
But it's
Good one.
great showing. Thank you. It's showing that it's been like handed down and they've been around forever. So it's not like there's a new emperor every couple 50, 60 years until Paul shows up and been like, yo, what's up? I'm taking over now. So that's what's also super important to Paul in part 2 being like, I'm the new emperor in town and I got my groove back. So
Yeah, and just like thinking of the significance of that, like just looking at our own world, like we've had like empires rise and fall over the centuries, and most of the time it has been that an empire lasted for at most a couple of centuries, and now here you have like a galactic empire that's like ruling over thousands of worlds, and this family has been ruling for 10,000 years. I mean, by the time the Dune novel comes around, so it's a really impressive history for that family.
And the stagnation becomes more expected, right? Because, not only are they limited in their technology, but they're limited in their traditions. They're limited in their viewpoints because of who's controlling the narrative. So, it makes like I have this thing where I harp on when you look at House of Dragon or something and you see that their fashion hasn't changed very much. Even though there's time that's passed between two different series, one's a prequel, one's not. It's like, why not? Why, our fashions change, our technologies change. We invented guns. Why didn't they? And so it sort of seems more plausible that if you have one family in charge and there's not a lot of technological development, that like maybe also art wouldn't change too much. Maybe transportation wouldn't change too much. So I think it makes it more plausible and more cohesive.
Yeah, and stagnation becomes very important in the later Dune novels, with
Right.
Golden Pass trying to break humanity out of that stagnation that has cursed it for thousands of years. So, Rachel, I think you said that is it a design decision or just being cheap and reusing designs
Yeah.
that they've already got? Well, I don't know, but it certainly does play into Frank Herbert's overall theme of stagnation. So the trailer continues, and we get some imagery that looks like it's going to be the elements. We've got fire, earth, water, wind. I've got the element mixed up there, I'm sure I have. But that then leads into the Emperor it looks like a very private chamber with someone we don't really see who it is, but this could be Sister Francesca, who's described as the Emperor's former lover, whose return to the palace strains the balance of power in the capital. It's a very interesting room. Makes me think of like a cone of silence from the novel, or even though that was described differently and shown differently in part one. Very golden, very ornate textures on there, which I thought were very nice. We get more of the imagery of elements, and then we see Faya Harkonnen, but she's on a balcony and she's overlooking what we see later on, I think, is going to be the Bene Gesserit school. Again, there's very little context to go on in the trailer, but the architecture design does look very brutal, so that's in keeping with what we've seen in the Dune movies. The lighting, looks good for a TV show. I've seen people comparing it to it's House of Dragons. It's it's any one of a number of TV shows, and that's where I think some of the trailer fails to excite some people. It doesn't seem to have its own visual identity in terms of the sets. You could take a still from any of these and you wouldn't necessarily know it was Dune or House of Game of Thrones or something like that. We have got very little to go on this. So I'm hopeful that as the series progresses, we do see a distinct visual identity. And the original director, he left the project because his creative decisions didn't mesh with Villeneuve's. And so it would have been interesting to see what that difference would have been. Would it looked more like Jodorowsky's Dune or Lynch's Dune, or would it just have no visual cohesiveness at all?
Yeah, and mentioning that scene with the emperor and allegedly it could be his Bene Gesserit concubine. So we're already getting that political intrigue because we're going to see in the next scene that the emperor obviously he has an empress, but then like he had this relationship with the Bene Gesserit, and they're talking about how the Bene Gesserit have been forming a network, so getting involved in all these families, and of course the imperial throne as well. So it looks like we're going to get a lot of interpersonal conflict there as well.
Okay, so we see Mark Strong standing up next to his empress. Then one of the most beautiful shots, I think, the whole trailer is, I can't, because I don't know who they are, I can't tell you who it is, that this person in this beautiful, gorgeous red dress. But then this is where it gets weird. It looks like a wedding ceremony, but it looks with a young child. And that's where I'm a little bit confused. And also the pomegranate. Can someone explain to me, has there been a connection with pomegranate and Dune? I know Dune gets kinky sometimes, but I just thought, what?
Call me by your name, but I'm
I've seen that
hoping we're
movie.
not anywhere with that kind of fruitiness.
I mean,
the
Dune often
pomegranate
harkens
isn't-
back to Greek, right? Greek mythologies. So
Yeah, it's also a symbol of fertility, and it's also using some marriage ceremonies as well on Earth. So it seems like they're drawing from real world uses rather than anything from the novels. But if this is a feudalistic society, then arranged marriages would presumably be fairly common, and so it wouldn't seem unlikely that there's a massive age difference, and a small child is being married off. In Earth's history, people have been married off when they were babies, and without ever met their spouse, they'd be separated by continents. So at least they're in the same room.
Yeah, I didn't even
And
know
this-
it was.
it's also shockingly organic looking, like it's
Yeah.
just this juicy red fruit that just opens up in the middle of the scene after we've been seeing nothing but like space and like smooth marble walls. So it's evocative.
The first time I saw it, I didn't even realize it was a pomegranate until later. I thought it was, maybe I was like, did they open up like a sandworm and that's just like guts of a sandworm? But obviously it's a pomegranate. That's the scene I'm the most excited about in this trailer. Like, who is this getting married and what's up with the fruit there?
Yeah. So in the wide shot of the wedding, you can see the Empress and the Emperor on the left, and on the right hand side, there's a couple in white. Now, from the cast list, we know that House Hagel is in it and House Righteous. So my guess would be it's one of these noble houses. Which one? I'm not sure yet. I don't know if anyone else has got any theories on this.
No, I think the only theory I had was, okay, well, these are all different houses or different schools or different functions because we're looking at different colors of clothing. But that was all I thought.
10,000 years ago, like that's before Dune, that there's still that aspect of, having to marry to form alliances, right? Because we do have a description for the Empress Natalia, who's played by Jodie May, and she's described as a formidable royal who united thousands of worlds in her marriage to Emperor Carino. So we know that Emperor Javico, he had, obviously a relationship with the Bene Gesserit. He may have had a child with them, but then he didn't marry the concubine. He married the empress in order to form this big alliance and expand his empire. So that's probably what we're seeing now. Could it be Princess Ines that she's having to marry like a younger boy from one of those noble houses to form another alliance?
And I'll just say as well, in the background on the banners, you can see what appears to be the House Carino symbol, which looks a little bit like an eagle to me. It looks more sort of a bird-like, like House Atreides. But that logo, either in its entirety or split in two, is on gates. It's on collars. It pops up all over this trailer.
I also got excited when I just saw the red dress in general because I don't know, it feels like a woman who is possibly connected to the Bene Gesserit in red has a very specific kind of vibe for people who've read all the Dune novels. So, I thought that was like a nice kind of visual language as well, like maybe a nod, maybe not actual foreshadowing, but like a visual language foreshadowing of them saying, "Hey, Dune fans, we've got you."
Yeah, I like that you make that point, Rachel, because one other thing I'll say about this particular kind of sequence is that, as I even said earlier, like at least immediately in the trailer, it shows you aesthetics and visuals that feel familiar and like are evocative of the Villeneuve films. But I don't know, I disagree with some people that are saying that this just looks like a complete like one for one of the Villeneuve films, because I think in terms of some stylistic choices, color, design, like there are definitely some distinctions between the two. And I think that, again, that should be there. And it does make sense to have some of those things because while it is the same universe, it is 10,000 years prior. And I think it makes sense to also approach it in a different way and try to inject some new ideas and some stylistic decisions that you can explore. And as you mentioned, Rachel, like can be evocative other novels, and it can allude to different things throughout the series, even if it's not explicit or even necessarily intentional, but like on some level, like we can kind of appreciate that. So I thought this sequence of shots for me in particular, the ceremony and the pomegranate and everything, the costume design, got my attention probably the most because it felt very new and it felt very different in a few different ways from the films, which I really appreciate. And that makes me more hopeful or optimistic. I think that it's not just, I disagree with it's a one for one or it's just copying Villeneuve. Obviously, they want it to be similar. Again, I think that makes perfect sense, but to get some fresh ideas and choices, I think is a good sign.
The next section sort of starts to layer in those plots within plots that we expect with Dune. So this one is a clip of Valia Harkonnen and her sister Tula Harkonnen, who are played by Emily Watson, and Olivia Williams, who I love, by the way. I love everything Olivia Williams is in. I think she's brilliant. But we don't really have great descriptions of them that were released officially, so don't have much to say about them other than the fact that Valia gets named in this scene. So they're in conversation with another Bene Gesserit, who I think might just be Reverend Mother Kasha again from the very brief flash we saw of like the back side of her face. And Valia is talking about putting a Bene Gesserit sister on the Imperial throne, while Tula is looking a bit concerned or maybe intrigued or maybe even afraid. We see a quick shot of, I think, Valia again in an office looking through a very ancient looking book. And this is more of that architectural language that it's very simple, brutalist, dark, imposing. And then we cut to Sister Theodosia, who's played by Jade Anuka, who is a talented and ambitious acolyte at the Sisterhood who harbors a dangerous secret about her past. And she is angrily saying, "This is us playing God, and we will be judged for it." And then they say Valia's name, but I'm not 100% certain that's from the same clip. I think that might have been edited in. The background shows that same triangular pattern that we can see in the wall in the prior office shot. So perhaps this is all set in the same place. And while she's being named, we see that Valia is again in sort of a grand library looking down on what looks like people at large tables. So I suspect that Valia is a highly placed Bene Gesserit at the school, and what we are seeing are scenes that are set at the Bene Gesserit school. That's pure speculation on my part because I have not read the books and I have not done a lot of research into the show itself. But
And in the novels, Valia is the main character. We basically see how she forms the Bene Gesserit and how she grows and leads them to their formation as one of the great schools of the Dune universe.
which I expect, right? Like we want them to be plotting. We want there to be maneuvering and talking in secret rooms and manipulation for sure.
And it's the line that they want a sister on the throne, that feels, the sisterhood is normally behind the scenes. They're pulling the strings of the puppet emperor or whoever, but to actually want a sister on the throne themselves, it doesn't seem to be in line with what we know of the sisterhood. But this is the foundation of the sisterhood, so their plans can obviously change.
Do we think it's a red herring, just as Dune fans, knowing that we're watching something called Dune Prophecy? Do we feel like that maybe the real prophecy is something else?
1 minute into it, we finally get our first look at an Atreides and Kieran Atreides. So this is the shot that kind of shocked me the most. But if you look at it, they're using very much a scene like when we saw Paul training with Gurney, but they're using the shield, the Hosman shields. And I didn't know that they were already created at this point in the Duneverse. This might be our most action-packed scene. I love it. I love that there's an Atreides. But what I'm afraid of the show is that it's going to be very much like, oh, look, you're an Atreides. You're all powerful and you're a great swords master. And then because we know later on that's what they are, I kind of want to be surprised with some of the family bloodlines. I don't want them to fall under this trope of what we're expecting. Like, I think it's cool that we have an Atreides that's a swords master, but I would have been okay with an Atreides just being a normal politician, or even at this point, just being an average Joe on, Caladan, if we get to see Caladan. Am I the only one that wants that kind of not being so obvious of what it's going to be in 10,000 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have been happy if it wasn't an Atreides at all, to be honest. I know they want to tie it into, the overall story, but, it's a Skywalker saga again, isn't it? Like every character has to be a Skywalker or a Palpatine or something. It's just, in the novels, there's a reason for, it's all to do with the Atreides and the Harkonnen rivalry and how that started and all back and forth with that. So maybe some of that will come into play in here, and is important for that rivalry, but as it stands, it's just reusing the name. But yeah, it does feel very much like Paul and Gurney fighting at the start of part 1.
And going by the character's description, they're clearly going for a major connection to the later novels, because they describe Kieran Atreides, a swordmaster to a great house whose ambition to live up to his family name is disrupted when he forms an unexpected connection to a member of the royal family. And, of course, we know that all the way in the original Dune novel that the Duke Leto and Emperor Shaddam are distant cousins, right? So that those families have been connected, and this could be that very first connection, like how those bloodlines get together. So definitely something intriguing is going to be going on there. It's going so fast with the fighting, but could this be Princess Ines? Like I think that they're sort of like alluding that there's going to be some relationship between Kieran and Ines. So maybe she's going to be married off, to that young child from another house, and then she's going to have a romantic relationship with Kieran, and then something's going to happen for them. And we do see the next scene where it looks like it's Kieran from the back. He's walking shirtless in this like forested area, and then later we see an intimate scene. Could that be the two of them together? So they're secretly having this relationship, and make sure that nobody knows about it. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And then kind of real quick here, I'll just touch on, so as we've mentioned already, there's this kind of aspect of the trailer that digs into like these 4 different elements, right? So we just talked about the shot from behind of that character walking through the forest. Then there's I believe it's the U in the trailer. That's used for like the fire, the flames. We get a couple of quick shots that look to be from the same scene where there's some sort of pyre or maybe some sort of ceremony related to it. There's characters like surrounding it. Not really clear what that is or what's going on there. Maybe someone that's read the book may have some idea what that could be. It's not anything that feels, familiar to me from reading, the first couple novels or the films. In fact, I feel like in terms of this trailer, at least, like there isn't a whole lot in the aspect of like, I don't know, like flames or like explosions or anything like that. Obviously in the films, there's a lot more of that going on. Here, it's all like relatively subdued. There's nothing like too intense or like large scale with that sort of stuff going on. So that kind of stood out. And obviously they're tying it into like the logo and how that's taking shape. I thought that was a cool little edit that they did, at least. And then right after that, of course, they are introducing like, the ice. And then we get a couple cool shots. This looks to be real to some level, on location maybe. It's this kind of snowy landscape. I would assume this is a different planet from the one that we saw in, throughout the trailer. There may be multiple planets seemingly that we've already seen, but this there's kind of like a forest, there's water off in the distance, there's a rock formation. Someone's carrying, it looks like maybe like wood or something like that, or a package. It kind of reminds me, it definitely kind of has just from a little like snippet we get of some architecture, like the hooded figure. It almost feels like reminiscent of like a Star Wars type of environment that you would see like on a snow planet or something like that. But again, they're just trying to like show you some different environments, some different aesthetics than what we're familiar with. Obviously,
I'm glad you brought that up because I had written like a note to myself, like, why are we being given elements? Like elemental connection isn't really a thing in Dune. Do they represent houses? Are they planets?
right.
Who knows?
Environments that we've got, we don't see Arrakis. Yeah. The one planet that's in the title. And
There's some
we
sand
don't
in
see
the
any of that.
transitions, though, right? Like,
That's true. We're saving that for season 2.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say that. That's one of the things that I think is like actually really exciting, at least to me personally, about the series is we haven't seen any of Arrakis in this trailer, but we've seen all these different worlds, right? Because this is a universe of an imperium of a million worlds, and of course Arrakis is a very important planet at the center of that, like that has the most important resource. But there are people living in all those other thousands of worlds, and like really important things going on there. People are living their lives. Many of them will never see what Arrakis looks like. So I think it's really interesting that we're going to get all these different perspectives. And I'd be fine if they leave Arrakis to the second season.
yeah.
Yeah, we do know that one of the cast members plays a Fremen in the Imperial Court. Well, sorry, at least someone from Arrakis in the Imperial Court. So they are at least hinting at that. So whether or not we'll see flashbacks or going to see a family or something.
And that's the most interesting thing to me, actually, because I want to know what is a Fremen representative in the Imperial Court 10,000 years ago? What are they like? What is their planet like? What are their goals? That's definitely like the most mysterious character for me when I was reading through that description of all the characters.
The trailer continues with some very rapid montages. So get your freeze frames ready for this because you're going to need them. It starts with a character walking into a hallway where there's lots of masked guards with swords, and they appear to have shield belts as well. So any Dune fans that were disappointed with the wrist-based shields might be happy that we're finally getting the shield belts from the novels. That continues to them to the soldiers appearing to raid some sort of pub or bar. They're overturning tables, they're smashing chairs. There doesn't seem to be anybody else in that location, so they're searching for something, or they're just intimidating the owner of the business. Again, it's not really clear at all. The bearded man could be Desmond Hart. We only see him very briefly from the side and from the back, so it's really difficult to see. The next sections become a bit more interesting from the sisterhood point of view, as we see Olivia Williams looking very upset or distressed at something. We don't see what she's reacting to. And then we see a very interesting scene, which is it's a white room, and across the top is a barrier, and there's loads of sisters peering down into this white room, which reminds me of like an old medical lecture theatre that you see in films where all the students are looking down at an operating table. And there's two sisters in there, and at the far end, there's an older sister. Now, this could be the Mother Superior Raquella, who was listed on her agency CV, although that's since been taken down. Her original part was filmed for the original director, and then they started again. So that character may not even be in this series. But from the novels, she is the original Reverend Mother, and she is trying to recreate that process to create more Reverend Mothers. So these two sisters could be guinea pigs, if you like. And certainly from the novels, there are two sisters that attempt this process. And one of them could die. Maybe that's the funeral we see at the start. Maybe it's something completely different. But this white room at the end, it reminds me of a lab. It's got very white, sterile lights, a hard top table. To me, it suggests scientific or medical. And in the novels, they are trying to produce the water of life equivalent, because Arrakis, they do their own poison transmutation, and they use plants from that planet. So there looks to be a bit of green at the background, could be imagination, but these could be trying to try some different herbs and plants to create this poison to create the Reverend Mothers. And the next shot is we see a sister in white on a soft top table, in distress. Her back is arching, which suggests the water of life, like we saw in Dune Part 2 when Jessica takes it. It's hard to see who this sister is, but it looks to me like it's Chloe, who plays Sister Lila in there. It's hard to see. It's a strange angle. She's upside down, but she's an acolyte in the description. So whether or not she is taking this water of life, I say water of life, I'm using that as a generic term here. Or is this a flashback to young Varya Harkonnen? It's all very up in the air, and I'm excited for that, because with Dune Part 1 and Part 2, for the most part, we knew what was going to happen. There were some twists and turns, but we could see a scene from the trailer, and 9 times out of 10, we knew what it was, what it related to, and where it fit into the story. With this, if anyone's got any better guesses or other guesses, please let us know. But for the moment, I think this is a sister taking the water of life.
Yeah, and assuming, and this is just speculation, but assuming that this is footage from just the first few episodes, it could be that this scene is somehow related to the funeral in one way or another.
And then we end with the logo on screen for the new Dune Prophecy logo. The Dune is a little bit different than the Dune logo we've seen for the movies, and the person who created the logo, or the person who works for the graphic studio that created it, said that they wanted to create that to make it visually distinct from the film. So it's part of the franchise, but it's not the film.
Smart design. I liked it when it first popped up. It wasn't what I was necessarily expecting, but I also like that it's kind of like, it's not fully formed. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's coming together. I think that it just thematically makes a lot of sense as well, but it's a fun kind of spin on the movie where it kind of keeps it separate.
I like to think I think I thought that it was like secrets yet to be revealed kind of thing, but yeah, something not fully
That too.
formed as well. That works as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's called Prophecy now. So, like Simon, I've been calling it Sisterhood constantly, even mistakenly. And then the trailer ends with Vaya Harkonnen on the throne, with a final line, which is "Sisterhood above all," I believe. It's looking very ominous. What she's doing on the throne, is that her vision of where she wants to be? A sister on the throne is what they say they want, or is she just snucking in at midnight and having a snack on the Emperor's throne without you noticing?
Yeah. So, however, they've changed it, because there have been changes, creative changes, as we mentioned, and they changed the name, but it's clear that the Sisterhood, the Bene Gesserit, are the focus of this show. That's made very clear here.
I think perhaps they want to sort of distance themselves from the book a little bit. So people don't read the book and then think that they know what the TV series is going to be. I think that's perhaps part of the reason for the name change.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, if they're not doing that, then yeah, don't call it that.
Yeah. So knowing that, I guess with the show being inspired by the book, but not a direct adaptation, as we've said in our past coverage, would people be interested in us doing like a book club for one of these books? Just let us know in the comments later on. But yeah, so that's going through the trailer. So definitely a lot going on here, and as mentioned, it really is a fresh story. We don't know what's going to happen here. So that's really exciting. Starting with you, Johnny, what's your overall thoughts now, having seen this first teaser for Dune Prophecy?
Cautious optimism. I think I was highly skeptical and have been for a long time. I mentioned this earlier in the show. It's just so many creative changes and quote unquote issues, I guess we can call it, in terms of production, vision, whatever you want to say. The best thing about the films is that they had a very clear vision. Like, there was no debate. Villeneuve got to do pretty much anything he wanted to do, and I think it worked out, pretty well for the most part. This, hopefully they were able to get on track. Still, you never know. I mean, visually, at least aesthetically, I'm pleased by what we got in this for the most part. It, I think, surprised me in some ways in terms of the direction they're going with the look of it, but also just kind of the overall tone, things like that. I think for an introduction, kind of a first impression, I think that I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, again, low expectations, but sometimes that's a good thing. You can get them surpassed, pretty easily, or exceeded. So
It's been 5 years coming, and as Johnny said, it's the curse of Dune. Whereas the Villeneuve films seems to have, the production went smoothly, apart from COVID and the actor strike at the end of production that delayed the release. The actual production was smooth. This has seemed to be the complete opposite. Everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong on these, by the sounds of it. Now, whether or not we end up with a Heath Robinson show where stuff has just been changed and changed and changed, or whether or not those abilities for them to step back, reassess it, has been a silver lining, and they've taken the opportunity to make something really good. That's what I'm hoping for. The trailer itself, just coming off of the back of Dune 2, we're watching it at home. We've got sandworm riding scenes. We've got gladiator fights. And so this, it's lower level. There isn't anything super exciting in this trailer. It's interesting how it will play out. I don't know, but I'll certainly be watching it. And I look forward to sharing out my thoughts with the rest of you later this year.
I'm also very cautiously optimistic. I didn't have like a lot of expectations, just for all the same reasons that you've all expressed. I think that they do have a chance to do something different, unexpected, and they have a chance to kind of break the mold of adaptations. We have a lot of science fiction adaptations on TV right now, science fiction and fantasy. And the most of the fan discussion is always, how accurate is it to the books? How close is it to the books? Well, if they've decided to break free of the book for, whatever their reasoning was, then they have a chance to give us a story that we don't expect, and that, we can be actually surprised by. So I'm excited to see that. And I think that the visuals are much better than I, thought they would be. So especially the costuming. I'm very into the costuming. I think it's great.
I also want to say
You
real
got any
quick,
cosplay ideas yet?
Oh, maybe.
See how good the show is.
Yeah.
I also want to mention, just because I haven't touched on it at all, but I think it's worth saying, is I think, again, even for just a TV show or a Max series or whatever you want to say, I think the cast is pretty good as well. I think that they have some strong names in their actors I like. And I think that really can help, especially with TV. I think if you have a good, solid cast or people you like to watch perform, I think that can keep your interest. And as from what Mark mentioned, at least online, I think you said it's confirmed to 6 episodes. Is that right?
That's
Okay.
what they've said on the Max website. Yeah.
Gotcha. So we'll see if this ends up being a limited series or if, surpasses expectations and people like it a lot. Maybe it'll get a smoother run and get a season 2 or something. But yeah, just try and keep expectations in check. But I think, again, with the cast, hopefully they can do some good work, even if maybe the original or mixed in story, whatever they're going to do with this, is maybe so. Maybe the characters will be interesting enough.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty well-known cast. It's interesting that they didn't even show the face from Travis Fimmel in any year, but like he's a very well-known name now in television. So yeah, a lot of good talent involved. Yeah, and I've said this before. I'm just excited by the fact that we're getting like a completely new story in the Dune universe, and I think it's such a a big universe. Like the original novels, they focus on Arrakis, but there's so much going on beyond that, and there's so many stories that are just dying to be told out there. So I'm really excited that we're going to get these different perspectives, and yeah, it's going to be fun because, as mentioned, we don't know what's coming. So I think we'll have some interesting discussions. Of course, here on Dune Talk, we're planning to do one show for each episode when it comes out, so you can look forward to that. So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up for today. So that was our first look at Dune Prophecy. There's probably going to be a lot more to come as we approach in the summer. Yeah, I do want to say thanks to everybody for all your support during the lead up to Dune Part 2. So you can look forward to a lot more for us as we enter the summer. There will be more breakdowns and interviews, and we'll be counting down to the TV series in fall. So yeah, let's go ahead and sign off for today.
Hi, everybody. I was Rachel. You can find me on Instagram at Darth_Rachel.
I'm Mark at Dune Info. You can follow me on all the socials.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us yet again. It's been a little while, again, since we've been on, and at least I've been on. So fun discussion, exciting times. Dune Part 2 is out there. The first book has been adapted for the big screen, but now the small screen gets a turn. So I'm excited and appreciate you watching. You can find me on social media, Twitter, etc. Johnny Sobchak, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, this was Marcus Gabriel. You can find me at Marcus's Writing. Yeah, look forward to the next Dune Talk.
We hope you've enjoyed Dune Talk. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when the next episode drops. Stay tuned to DuneNewsNet.com and add us to your social feeds. Be the first to hear breaking news and reviews.